Welcome into Palillo Points. I'm Brandon Strange of SportsMap Houston. He is Charlie Palillo of ESPN Houston. If you like this content, please remember to subscribe to the channel. Charlie, the media circus surrounding James Harden rolls on, following images surfacing him being maskless at a party. The talking heads all proclaimed that Harden's value was plummeting and that the Rockets were idiots to hold on to him and trying to squeeze maximum value from suitors or potential suitors. And then on Saturday night, with a team that was missing basically everybody, John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, Eric Gordon, James Harden drops 44 and 17 on the Blazers, forces overtime, and almost single-handedly defeated a Blazers team that were pretty much at full strength. So, Charlie, I'm just curious what your opinion on this is. How much does that ebb and flow of Harden's mixture of salacious headlines versus the on-court performance really impact the trade value of James Harden? Is that something that's really fluctuating, or is that something that us talking heads just like to pontificate about?
I think we live in a world of overreaction, and the first gusts of air in response to anything typically are going to be the windiest and often the most overblown. Now, we shouldn't minimize that Harden certainly wants out. Over the longer haul, it's probably untenable. But I think as fans and definitely bloviating segments of the media, there's just a tendency to deal in absolutes, that it 100% must end, and it must end now. A lot of times, things blow over. Or there's the saying, things are never as good as they seem to be when they're going well. Things are never as bad as they seem to be when they're going poorly. Now, does James Harden get over the sense of, I absolutely want out of here? Will the grass always be many, many shades greener than where things are with the Rockets? Or, as the Rockets probably still hope, as ticked off as they are at Harden for how this has gone, let the stew actually simmer a little bit, as opposed to the pot must be served as the meal right now, or throw the whole pot out the window. Christian Wood, 31 and 13 in his Rockets debut. Harden's never played with a 5 with the versatility. If he and Wall can get along given a little time together, and the Rockets win a pretty good percentage of their games, that Philadelphia is off to a Mensa start might not be good from the standpoint of if you're hoping to keep Harden, if Philadelphia gets antsy or Daryl Morey's just itching to make that big move, if you're not a Ben Simmons guy, but Morey's open to putting Simmons in, but that we had to go from, forget 0 to 60, 0 to 180 to get to the finish line. Harden has to go and go now. No, he really didn't. And the origin of the story is he's under contract for 2 more years. So if it's a ticking time bomb, it is a pretty long fuse. It need not blow or be blown up instantly.
All right, well, you said a couple things. I want to split those into 2 different questions. The first one I want to ask you about is it is a small sample size. We do want to stress that, but you mentioned the chemistry that's already there between Harden and Wood. Given what we've seen, and let's say the Rockets don't really see a package that they really like, or maybe there isn't really an offer of substance to trade for Harden. If Harden doesn't get moved and this team, starts to look good, and I've asked you this question before, but now we've actually seen this team on court, would Harden play and buy in and be professional through that sort of scenario?
If they are comfortably over 500, not tearing up the league, but where they're clearly better than mediocre, that if they're running with the Denvers and the Utahs and the Portlands, the Lakers, I don't think, are going to have an awesome record this regular season, but come playoff time, everyone knows the Lakers will still be the team to beat. I think the Clippers are a cut above them. But if they're demonstrably at least in the mix with everyone else, Harden, for all of his peccadillos and his ego, the guy is a baller. He loves to play. He shows, attendance, not just physically being there. He plays hard. He plays heavy minutes. He does not just sit games out unless he moves in that direction where, my ankle's sore tonight, or, I have the sniffles. I think I'm going to sit this one out. I think the good part of Harden's ego is that he's great. He loves displaying that he's great. And he's now back to kind of carte blanche to run things full time as much as he likes and get his points. And he tied his career high in assists in the first game. There will be that navigation with Wall, but I don't think Wall is the forceful personality or the one to call Harden out on his poop a little bit the way that Westbrook would. So while I would still bet against Harden being a Rocket, say, come next season, I'd probably bet against Harden being a Rocket at the end of this season, but I don't think it's a 99 to 1% chance that he is out. It could be salvageable because the Rockets roster is not the Cleveland Cavaliers. It's not the New York Knicks. They could be decent, and I don't think Harden, no matter how upset he might be off the court and desiring getting elsewhere, number one, it's probably sinking in that he can't just handpick his team and they're going to give up whatever he wants them to give up to acquire him. And secondly, Harden remains great. He's 31. He's not even in shape when he dropped that 44 and 17. So they should be able to build into being a pretty good team. If Wall is healthy, Westbrook to Wall, I would say, is a drop-off, but it's not Acapulco cliff diving. If Boogie Cousins is 15 to 20 minutes per game serviceable, that's better than any big the Rockets had post-Capella trade. And Wood is already established he's more diversely talented, right? He's going to get beaten up some in the post defensively. But how many teams have big guys who can really exploit that the way Portland did with Nurkic? You're not going to see Joel Embiid more than twice per season unless it's in the finals. So it's just going to be fascinating, and it's going to have soap opera drama to it. But I don't know that day-to-day the temperature needs to be taken at, does he have to be traded today? Does he have to be traded today? Does he have to be traded today? There is a longer game to this.
One major factor that could contribute into sort of the urgency of trading for him and putting packages together for him is injuries on other teams. Could the league be one major injury away from a true bidding war on James Harden?
I don't think a bidding war. That I just think there are too many teams that at his salary, with some concern about the ego and the stylistic fit. Pat Riley may have kicked the tires as due diligence. I never bought in for a second that coming off making the finals, Pat Riley was going to risk blowing up the laboratory with a chemistry experiment, adding James Harden to Jimmy Butler and just that whole Miami Heat culture. The Nets have already lost Spencer Dinwiddie to a partial ACL tear. Not a season-ending injury, but he's going to be out for several weeks at least. One of the guys mentioned as well, if the Rockets are trading Harden there, Dinwiddie would need to be one of the guys coming back. I think Philadelphia is probably the most natural wild card. You have the Morey component, and they have the young, legit star player in Ben Simmons, who meets the Rockets' first prerequisite. I mean, the Rockets, of course, are overshooting in what they're hoping for. We want a young franchise player. You're not going to get a young James Harden back for James Harden at 31 years old with the money he makes when teams know you're looking to trade him. I don't think the market will be robust, but all it takes is one ardent suitor because of underachieving play or an injury that forces it to recalibrate what it thinks it can get done this season. I think Philadelphia best meets that possible definition, but it'll probably take several weeks before the Sixers would draw any conclusion that makes them say, let's pull the trigger on Harden if it meant Ben Simmons. They'd include Tobias Harris as the key guy coming back tomorrow, but the Rockets would not go for that now. So who blinks will be a little bit of this when or if a trade actually happens within the season.